Welcome to Season 2 of the Simply Dynamic podcast. I'm Jennifer Maiden, co-creator and executive producer of this podcast, and the Assistant Dean of Graduate Studies at Rowan University's Rohr College of Business. Today, I invite you to join our hosts, Joe Devine and Christina Renna, for a discussion with Dr. Tony Lowman, the Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs at Rowan University. Tony is also founder and part-time CTO at RegelTech, a combination world-class academic team alongside experienced medtech executives, guiding new technologies and companies from inception to exit.
Hey, Christina, guess what?
Tell me.
You know what today is?
Is it podcast day?
And it's a Simply Dynamic podcast. You know why?
Tell me.
So we have a special guest today, someone who was an engineer, but also ultimately became provost of Rowan University. It's Dr. Anthony Lowman. We will call him Tony for our purposes.
Okay.
But we're going to find out a lot about what a provost does. And honestly, I don't think most business leaders know what a provost does, but I think today's podcast will be fun because one, Tony's a great guy. And number two, he's kind of dynamic. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's get started. You know, this podcast is all about leadership at the end of the day, you know, how you got to where you are today, mentorship, challenges, and then a little bit about the industry in which you're in higher education. So we're going to talk a little bit about everything today, learn a lot about you. So I think we should just kind of start at the beginning. You've had, an interesting career path. Let's talk about what led you to your current position today as provost of Rowan University. Then we'll kind of get into what actually is a provost.
Right.
That's a great question. How far back do I start?
As far back
Short
as
as you can
like.
abbreviatedly make it.
How did it start?
Why did you choose education?
I chose education my last year as an undergraduate. I was working in a research lab for fun right before I graduated. And I worked for a graduate student who I thought had the coolest job in the world. And so I asked him one day, what do you do when you get a PhD? What kind of job do you have? Is it better than I get with a bachelor's degree? He said, well, I'm going to become a professor at the University of Tennessee. And all of a sudden I thought that sounds like the coolest job in the world. Mm-hmm. So that's how I made my decision that I wanted to go. I was kind of set right from that day. The challenge was then as I had to go figure out how I was going to get a PhD because it was April of your final year.
We're not going to say
the year.
Your final year. Yeah.
April of my final year. And I already had a job lined up, hadn't applied to graduate school. So I decided to take the job I had. And in 2-3 years, I was going to apply to graduate school. Then I went to work and I was like, boy, did I like school and I like the academic environment. So I turned around those applications in light speed, got in the next application cycle, found the area I wanted to study.
Which was?
Chemical engineering. But I was very interested in the biomedical side, so not a lot of biomedical engineering programs at the time. Thinking back to where we were when I was going to graduate school, there wasn't the internet. So I spent weekends at the library going through science, nature, and I found a chemical engineer doing something that I thought was amazing. It's really working biomedical engineering, looking at drug delivery, looking at artificial body parts, tissue engineering. I thought that's what I wanted to do. So that's where I ended up, is at Purdue University. But how I got there is I didn't start off as an engineer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I started off, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Oh.
Eventually connects to what I do today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now you know it. But the challenge was I went to a cadaver lab and I fainted. My first year at UVA, I fainted during a blood drive at the site of a needle, not given the blood. So I talked to someone who said, this might not be a good idea for you, this medical route.
Yeah.
Sure.
How about engineering, biomedical engineering, and things like that?
Especially when they were peeling you off the floor.
Yeah. And actually, in one of my ventures, when I was a faculty member, I went into a cadaver lab thinking, you're 15 years, 20 years later, and they were going to test one of our devices. And I hit the floor there. So
did you really?
I hit the floor there, yeah.
Wow.
Over in Westchester.
So I'll tell you an ironic story. I have a niece who's a great nurse and an ER nurse for years. And she can take blood, but if they take blood from her, she faints. So there you go. You got the same kind of analogy, right?
I can't see the needle prick anyone's
Wow.
skin. Yeah, that's it.
So that's how you got into what you did.
So that's how I got into what I did.
And how did the path get you to Rowan?
Oh, so I went to graduate school, went on a path. I was in Indiana, so I was from the East Coast, so the pace of life was not my speed. I spent a lot of time in lab. I got through my PhD in a little over 3 years, and I landed at Drexel.
Wow.
As a faculty member. My PhD mentor was Greek. He said, hey, you should look at this school over in Philadelphia. They got this really dynamic Greek president I knew back from my MIT days. And that's where I landed.
So that's how you got with Taki, huh?
That's how I got with Taki, who lived up to everything he promised when I signed on.
Drexel was at the pinnacle back then. They were really moving forward big time. They still are today, but back then he really elevated them to a whole new level.
He did. And it was during that time I was a faculty member, research. I started a company, had a lot of success, a couple of positions, and I got to meet somebody who I thought was maybe just as dynamic as Taki. That was now our current president,
Right.
Ali Hushman. So I got to know Ali pretty well over there. So it was a no-brainer when he said, hey, we're going to get the band back together and we're going to do something great over on this side of the river.
That's great.
So
Well, you've certainly done a lot over here, and his leadership has been great, as is yours. My question is, for people who don't know, what does a provost actually do?
yeah, that's a good question. So the provost is the chief academic officer of the university. So anything that's related to the academic enterprise, the student enterprise, really falls under the provost's purview. I think at different universities, different people, the role can vary sometimes. Some universities, I think the provost role actually becomes very ceremonial. Here, given, I think, how I've transitioned from a dean here to a provost, looking at the growth Ali wants, he really wants a provost that's hands-on and very engaged. So that's good from the standpoint of is we have a lot of opportunity to go after the big ideas.
Right.
And there's never shortness here.
Right.
Think of the big things we've got to do since I've got to be provost, I've got to be involved in, right, is the partnership with Virtua Health
Absolutely.
to build kind of a whole new college
Yeah.
with 2 brand new schools and really energizing an existing school. How about a vet school? How cool is that?
Mhm.
Everything about that's academic.
So incredible.
You know, to have the only one in the state of New Jersey, the amazing interest in something like that's a lot of fun.
It's the first one in a long time period, right?
First and only one in New Jersey.
Yeah, but in the whole country, there's not that many.
Not that many. It's harder to get into vet school than it is medical school.
Yep.
There's 32. I think we'll be number 33 or 34. I don't remember the exact. I think there's one right behind us coming down the pike.
Okay.
But it's not an easy endeavor. It costs a lot of money. So we had to have the state involved. And of course, Jerry Schreiber,
Right.
Yeah.
It's your donor.
incredibly generous gift to get that off the ground. So really the pieces coming together like that to make it happen. That's what a provost does. You get to be involved with the academic development of that. You get to be involved with the research, the student side, and it's getting to be involved in so many of those things actually makes it, I think, just an incredibly fun job
Right.
and rewarding.
Sure.
Because if you think about this is the vet school, I think we're looking at tuition for a vet student. I know it's going to sound on a podcast like a lot, but our New Jersey residents who go to our vet school are going to pay somewhere in the range of $37,000 to $39,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
The same kid from New Jersey today wants to go to vet school. It's going to go out of state, private school, pay $70,000,
Wow.
$80,000, leave there with $200,000 of debt. And I can tell you the reason this thing is so reasonably priced is, one, Ali's vision, which again, without him putting the bounds around it, what he wanted this to be, and the vision of the university, without the state support, without Jerry Schreiber support, I mean, this could have been another vet school at $70,000, $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to have a world-class vet school that's going to be very, very affordable for kids
That's
in New
great.
Jersey.
And we were lucky to talk to Dr. Edson not too long ago and learn, a lot of the ins and outs of what's going to happen, and just incredibly exciting. And running the South Jersey Chamber, always proud to say this is not just happening in New Jersey, it's happening in South Jersey.
Exactly.
So added bonus points there. So, Tony, as, essentially the academic leader of the university, obviously you get to be on the forefront of all of these really exciting projects. What are some of the challenges when it comes to being a provost that you have to deal with?
Can I ask a quick question to add to that? And I know our producer doesn't like me to do that, but think about that when you answer this. How many direct reports do you have, and how does that tie into the challenges?
Too many direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big operation. So if we think about the challenges is managing a big operation. But I think if you be thoughtful about it, it becomes a strength to have that many direct reports because you got a lot of great ideas, a lot of smart people working for you, doing the work. So, and it took some time to get the structure. And after a couple of years, I think I got it. The biggest challenge I face as provost, number one, is 6 months into this thing, my run, I'm sitting at a meeting with university leadership saying, what are we going to do about students, spring break, this virus coming along, and what should we do? I had, we talked through the idea, let's send them home, stay home an extra week, figure out just in case 2 classes remote. So the idea's on the table, and I kind of say to the room, who makes this decision? And everyone in the room points at you. So it accelerated, I think, growth into this job in a way I would have never imagined. And that became very hard because assured that every decision we make, we're going to frustrate 50% of our population.
Provosts can't say the word.
Listen, I would rather say something like, if I'm going to say something like that, I'd rather get my money's worth. So I learned very quickly that you can never make everybody happy.
So the irony of this is you and my co-host actually had this similar, why don't you tell them your similar quick story?
Yes. In short, I was 3 months into the role of president and CEO of the South Jersey Chamber of Commerce. Joe Devine, my podcast host, was my chair of the board at the time. I'm 38 years old, handed over this amazing organization. This virus comes down the pike, and on March 11th, we have an executive committee meeting, and Joe comes in and says, I think you have to cancel events. And I told him, you're insane. This is this is our number one revenue generator. If we cancel events, we're not going to have any revenue. Got to cancel. I said, well, let's give it a week. And then within 2 days, we had canceled events for 2 weeks. And the next thing you know, we had canceled events for
Made them all virtual. Yep. And that's what you did as well. You
flipped everything to two. Yeah. We ended up with 222 virtual programs in 2020 alone, just to kind of keep that revenue stream up and keep obviously people informed and educated. So very similar.
And so now you're more resilient because of it.
I like to think
we all are.
Well, as I always say, we did things quicker. Being in the healthcare field, we did things quicker, and we did things in 2 months used to take us 3 years to do, or 2 weeks sometimes. So people had to be adaptable, and you had to adapt the educational model as well. And talk a little bit about that challenge during that time for both faculty and students.
So we were I think we were very lucky here. We had a faculty that adapted probably better than most of the institutions I know. They jumped right into it. I think because of our history, the commitment to undergraduate education, our faculty really did whatever they could do. Students struggled with it. I think the isolation really hurt them. I think it became a lot harder for them to engage because I think part of their university engagement is beyond the classroom. So when you're missing that and then trying to engage virtually became a challenge. So I saw a lot more struggles. But I think our faculty did a great job. And then after that first spring, the university, I think we were probably more aggressive in bringing our students back on campus and pushing forward when we could, pulling back when we had to. And I think that bought us a lot of trust with our faculty. It bought us a lot of trust with our students, which is, I think, why we're in a pretty good situation with our students today and our faculty. Yeah, but that was a good learning experience, and it prepped me for a lot of the challenges that I faced. It prepped me for the challenge of no matter what you do as a provost, someone is going to think that's a bad idea.
Right.
Any leader, by the way, falls into that.
I know that.
Well, one of the other questions we wanted to ask you was kind of about technology in learning and higher education, and what kind of advancements are there that students and faculty are leaning on that's helping drive Rowan University forward. And I think, how does that continue to grow moving forward?
So I think it accelerated the whole evolution of higher ed. I think we were already seeing on our campus more online classes and more online classes for traditional students to be on campus. They want to be in a fraternity. They want to be in student government. They want to play a sport. We saw a lot of students taking 1, sometimes 2 online classes just for convenience. But I think getting into the pandemic and then sitting in front of a Zoom screen, then starting to see faculty who started to get innovative during the pandemic by doing things differently, by becoming a little more hybrid, by using, engagement with videos and other materials. Students kind of came back and said, okay, what's really boring to me? Sitting in front of a Zoom screen. I never want to do that again for a classroom. I don't like this prepackaged online model, which seemed to be pretty popular before the pandemic. And just going into a classroom every day and sitting around and being lectured to is not what I want. So we had to rethink everything we do. And, one of the things we were playing with before the pandemic is we had launched our first virtual reality-based class, which we were very, very excited about. And it was a team from biomedical arts, sociology and engineering. They did a fantastic class, but it was expensive. It was costly to run, but students loved it. I went and talked to the group actually during the pandemic when they were still meeting face to face after we got past that first spring. And just to see the diverse group of learners in there in terms of their backgrounds, what they were going to do. You had an engineer who was going to go work for Lockheed Martin in the class, same class of virtual reality with a College of Ed major who was going off to teach history. You're like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
To have them in the room studying the topic they were going to study. So as the pandemic was loosening, we're thinking, okay, how do we challenge faculty? How do we get more exciting? How do we push the envelope? And there's some things we're doing with our current technologies to advance that. But the really exciting thing is we went out and partnered with Arizona State and Dreamscape Learn to bring virtual reality classes. So
and for those who don't know, Arizona State's at the leading edge of this, correct?
Arizona State during COVID partnered with a Hollywood studio to create. I can't even. It's hard to describe. Imagine the most exciting simulator ride you've ever been on, and now use that as your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this does.
We've been lucky at the Chamber to take a group of educators every summer to the VR lab and see everything from the skeleton of a human body to planning from the Pope's visit a few years back in Philadelphia. And it's absolutely just fascinating. And no matter what discipline you're studying, you can do something in that lab that's going to be applicable moving forward. And it's happening right here.
Now, what you'll see is, and I no disrespect to my colleagues, but when you bring them back this summer, and you'll see the new experience we have at the tech park, it's like night and day.
Is it? Mm-hmm. I will circle back in July. That's when I'm going.
She's coming in July.
Here in July.
This shows you the leap in technology.
Sure.
The leap in technology that existed. And what I love is we're already able to take content we developed in the VR environment you've already seen, and we're moving it into this new technology platform, which is just incredible. It's like playing Pee-wee flag football like we used to, and now you're stepping up to playing in the NFL.
That's great.
It's truly immersive. The students are engaged. The learning outcomes that they've gotten for the first classes that they've run, Arizona State, are absolutely phenomenal. It's going to help us better use our classroom resources, better use our lab resources. So we have the Tech Park facility. We'll be opening brand new classrooms in the fall in our library. So our newly renovated library where students will actually go into a classroom setting with this. So, we think this is the future. And as I say, when I spoke at a panel at Arizona State, when they asked, why did Rowan want to jump in? What we've done by putting this technology on our campus is we've given ourselves that 5-year head start on everybody else. Because I don't think this is where we're ultimately going to end up or be our only play in new learning technologies, but we're already there. We're already ahead of the curve, and our faculty are really jumping to use this. So I think this is just going to be the start of the technology movement. Now, why do we want to be there? Because the higher ed market is incredibly challenging today. Mm-hmm. So we're all going to be struggling to find students. I think, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but 3 to 5 years, a lot of schools that exist today aren't going to exist. They're not. And the ones that are going to still be here surviving are going to be doing things different. But we don't want to be just the school that's surviving. We're going to be the school
thriving.
We're going to be thriving. And the only way you're going to thrive is you got to stay ahead of the game.
So let me pivot on a unique strategy that ties into the technology and virtual work as well into the future is medicine. You have partnered with the virtual health system. You've created a whole new entity and organization partnership between Rowan University and Virtua that obviously is going to change and have an impact on the future of not only medical education, but the care of people in our communities. Why did you do that? And what will happen into the future that you think will be beneficial to the community to do these things, especially the fact that you have 2 medical schools and now a vet school that will make things a lot different?
Well, I think you'll understand coming from your background, the medical school really needs a strong health system partner. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the 2 medical schools we have CMSRU, which has a great partner in Cooper Health. It almost functions like a self-contained unit. We get everything we need. The students are educated, the residencies run, and the workforce is really generated down there. And it's so that's a great program. The School of Osteopathic Medicine, one, is really too big for any one health system. It's the largest one in New Jersey. I believe we had 288 new students last year with our campus expansion. So when that gets to steady state, we'll be approaching nearly 1,200 medical students, which is massive. They had a long-standing partnership, but it was really a dated partnership between three organizations that don't exist today.
Mm-hmm.
UMD&J, Lords, and the Kennedy system,
Right.
obviously. So we were looking for a new partner. And we happened to find one that, with Virtua, that matched exactly what we wanted to do. Wanted to become an academic health system, wanted to be a leader in really, I think, transforming healthcare in the region, saw our need to grow as a research university, married with their alignment for recruiting talented, top-notch talent. And more importantly, this came about starting during the pandemic. So they were seeing that workforce shortage firsthand.
Right.
Not just physicians, but the nurses, the respiratory therapists, the physician assistants, all these new programs that we're bringing online. And they wanted to be a partner in that.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought, okay, this is great. And I think in our field, certainly in the higher ed field, and you could probably speak to the medical field, the way that partnership came together and the time with the size and scope, that was incredible timing how we did it and what we've accomplished. But I think it spoke to the need. So we did it. So
we'll certainly give an impact to the demand that's out there, and you say the changing guard in healthcare. A lot of nurses and professionals retired, not only in COVID but post COVID, because it was such an emotional, stressful time.
Yep.
So,
and we've talked a little bit about Dr. Hushman and Ali's leadership here on the Rowan campus, and his always pushing forward, not being scared to take a chance or take a risk, and being ahead of the curve. A lot can be said about Dennis Pullen of Virtua as well, which is why I think those two leaders work so well together here in our South Jersey community. Talk a little bit about mentorship growing up, and as you landed here, did you have mentors that you looked up to in your career along the way?
Oh, absolutely. Every part of my journey has been shaped by a different mentor. My first was my PhD mentor, Nicholas Pepys. I kind of viewed him, he was all in one, my thesis advisor, probably my best friends, brother, father, all wrapped in one. We're still close to this day. And then when I moved into my academic field, as I moved up the administration, I had a pretty good mentor in Ken Blank. I think you knew Ken very well.
Absolutely.
Ken kind of taught me the ropes on managing research and some of these things. And then really as I transitioned into my leadership role here at Rowan, Ollie's been a great mentor. You can't get better than that.
Agreed.
So it's kind of again, I've been shaped all along the way. And
if someone's young in the education field, higher education, and they want to move into administration, what would your advice be to them?
Don't ever ask for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
I think every step in the right direction for leadership that I've gotten, I've never asked. It's happened because I've done the job I wanted to do well. The only time in my career that I would say that I feel like I failed and took a step back was when something that I thought I wanted and I pushed and I asked.
Well, that's great advice, actually.
And that's how it was. And I've had a lot of colleagues who've come up behind me and asked, hey, how do I get the job you just left? How do I get this? How do I get that? And you know what? None of them have been successful. I've done it by just keeping my head down and doing my job.
Just doing it. Because I always say to people, you got to do that job effectively first before you move into the next job. And don't be thinking about the next job. Think about that job.
That's right.
And then for that job, you'll shine and show it. So.
Yeah. Look, I used to think the best job my first administrative role, I was an associate dean for undergraduate affairs at Drexel. I actually never accepted it. I kind of talked with the dean on a lark and told him I'd think about it over the weekend, let him know Monday morning. And he announced it on Sunday night before I could actually say no.
Yeah.
So, and then I did it. And I thought, this is the best job ever.
Right.
And then I moved to the next thing. And that was the best job.
Yeah, sure.
Then I tried to step into something and force myself, and that was the wrong direction. Then I became dean here, and I thought that was the best job. And I remember the day Ali asked me to take this next job. We'll say asked. That was close to what happened.
Right.
He asked me, what is your vision? What do you want to do? I said, I'll be the dean of this engineering school for 20 years or however long you're going to be here. He said, what's next after that? I said, I don't know. When you're gone, I'll figure out what I'm doing next. But then I moved into the provost role. And all of a sudden, hey, this is the best job.
Good.
You know? So I think keeping the idea that the job you're doing is the best job at the time has helped.
So thinking about the fact that that is the best job and is a busy job, and we know you have 100 direct reports. I'm only kidding. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but
Not too far.
I know. But the reality of it is we appreciate your valuable time today. And it's been a great interview. And as I told you, Christina, this is going to be dynamic. It wasn't just simply dynamic, it was dynamic. And then we got to understand what a provost does, what their work is, and how somebody who wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, became an engineer because he wasn't able to take the size of a needle, but most importantly, corrected his path to where he wanted to go in his career journey. And I think they're important lessons. So Tony, thanks for being with us today.
No,
Christina, I'm going to let you close out.
No, absolutely, Tony. We just really appreciate the time and all that you're doing for the university. Everyone knows Ali. Not as many people, maybe outside of Rowan University, have the pleasure of getting to know you and see how hard you work on behalf of this university. So from all of us here in South Jersey, thank you. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for spending time and sharing some of this with us today and our guests.
But now he is a chamber board member, so we should be seeing him soon.
I mean, as he talks about all his direct reports, I was going to say, don't talk about how many volunteer board of directors you serve on as being a problem, because yes.
And finally, one other thing, because of your work and assistance and support of this podcast, this is how it took off. And, you know, we had this idea and we started to talk about it, and we appreciate all you've done to help make this successful. And I think you'll see this season 2 has really become dynamic. We're going to have some great guests, not just including you, but really some great guests that are going to really make an impact on how people learn about leadership. So thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that chat as much as I did. What was your key takeaway from this discussion? Share it on our social media channels at Simply Dynamic Podcast. Next up, in our Fresh Perspective segment, established leaders and early career professionals will share insights and ideas on self-leadership through intentionally building good habits and routines.
Self-leadership and self-management, I think it's mostly about juggling priorities and multiple roles. And we all do that. Whatever you're looking at is a moment in time in your life. So right now you're managing these roles, these priorities, and you have set your eyes on a new position or title, promotion, whatever that is. Yes, go ahead and give it everything you got in that bucket. Remember that there are other things where you still need to have energy and effort and time, resources, so that you can continue to be a whole person. You're not just one title, one promotion, one job.
Some of the important habits I have for my productive self is prioritizing my tasks. I want to make sure that I am doing what's important. First thing in the day, I start my day early, and I use time to control how I'm going to get it done. I'm going to say, if I want to give 3 hours to complete this task, I do it that way. And I use breaks constantly. The rule of give yourself a break 55 minutes into like a class works for work too, even if it's just getting up and walking around your office or your cube, so that way you have some time not thinking about that work. It makes your day go better.
In today's day and age, we all know how competitive it is in school, in work, in athletics, everything. But there are some simple habits that you can use to stay ahead. One, you can keep a calendar. This is a super easy way to stay focused and organized. When something comes up, write it down immediately. Whether it's school, a call from your coach, or scheduling a text to your loved one, this is really important just to stay focused and that you can hit all your action items. I want you to be professional. I want you to think ahead. I want you to put yourself in the person's shoes that you're asking a question to. If you want someone to do something for you, you have to make them want to do it. You have to make it easy for them to do it. If you want to have a meeting with someone, have the Zoom ready for them. If you want their time, that is what they are giving to you. Everything else, it is your responsibility. And being successful is really as simple as finding a goal, making a plan, and executing it. Don't make it more complicated than it has to be. And also, don't worry about your work-life balance, because when we have something that we are passionate about, it can become all-consuming. But again, when it becomes integrated into our life, it also starts to sustain us, where the work actually becomes the reward and everything else is just a byproduct of your success.
The best advice to become your most productive or professional self is to find what works for you. I'm a type A personality. I need everything structured, and I leave little to no room for error in my schedule. So a digital schedule actually works the best for me. I'm able to add whatever I need into my schedule through my phone or my computer, and I'm even able to invite other people into the event so it shows up on their schedules as well. What I use and what I prefer is the Google Calendar. I love color coding everything, and I'm able to structure my life in order to have that balance of work and play. That works for me, but my mother, who owns a marketing agency, she uses Post-its to write down her every thought. She likes to put Post-its throughout the house, and she actually knows where every single one is and the exact time that she puts it up. But again, it's all about what works for you. And when you find what makes you your most productive and professional self, you got to stick with it. Sienna Rowan-Pula, CEO and founder of Pula Tracker, Rowan MBA Fellow.
Ryan Ems, MBA student, Rohr College of Business, founding president of Rowan Students for Sensible Drug Policy.
Robert Rogers, member engineering staff at Lockheed Martin, Rohr College Business Fellow, Rowan MBA student.
Dr. Olga Vulchanu, Associate Professor, Department of Public Relations and Advertising, College of Communication and Creative Arts at Rowan University.
In each episode of the Simply Dynamic podcast, we like to close out with an action-oriented tip from an expert that you can implement in your workplace. Today's expert advice comes from Tanika Wilson, Staff Vice President at Elevance Health, a leading provider of health and welfare solutions where she drives customer success and process improvement.
In a world where change is the only constant, today I really want to focus in on adaptability and flexibility. These dynamic capabilities are crucial in leading organizations and diverse teams towards long-term success. Organizational adaptability really hones in on a leader's ability to anticipate, respond to, and capitalize on changes in the external and internal business environment. This nimbleness enables the leader to pivot and adjust their strategic vision, ensuring that the organization remains aligned with its missions and values, even in the face of unexpected challenges. For instance, during COVID, as a healthcare company, we had to quickly make changes internally to move our associates to a virtual work environment, while at the same time modifying all of our plans to accommodate federal mandates, as well as customer-requested changes to accommodate COVID vaccines and COVID-specific care. This adaptability not only kept our operations running smoothly, but also safeguarded our employees' health and job security, demonstrating our commitment to our values. Flexible leadership, on the other hand, really emphasizes the understanding and leveraging of unique skill sets and values each team member brings. This approach is about recognizing diversity, not as a buzzword, but as a strategic asset. By managing the individual strengths and encouraging their contributions, leaders can foster a culture of inclusion and innovation. A practical application of flexible leadership might involve delegating tasks based on an individual's strength rather than someone's seniority in the company. Like in sports, a coach will strategically position players, each with unique skills, balancing their individual talents into a cohesive performance. This approach not only leverages individual strengths, but also boosts team morale and productivity, as each member feels valued and a part of the team. The synergies between organizational adaptability and flexible leadership lies in the recognition that diversity drives business success. In a rapidly changing world, the ability to integrate diverse ideas and perspectives really becomes a competitive advantage. I think leaders who embrace this dual approach of adaptability and flexibility are best positioned to navigate their organizations through the complexities of the modern business landscape. As leaders, the challenge becomes cultivating dual capabilities within ourselves and our organization. By doing so, we not only navigate change more effectively, but also unlock the full potential of our teams through empowerment, valuing individuality, and creating cohesive teams. In 2024, the heart of exceptional leadership lies in the adaptability and the flexibility. Being agile enough to steer your organization through change and wise enough to harness your team's diverse strengths defines the future success of leadership. Tanika Wilson, Staff Vice President, Market Solutions at Elevance Health, Rowan MBA Alumnus.
Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today, and thank you, our audience, for listening to the Simply Dynamic podcast. This podcast is a collaborative project led by the Graduate Studies team at Rowan University's Rohr College of Business in partnership with our hosts, Joe Devine and Christina Renna, and with support from producer and creative director Keith Brand, a professor in Rowan's radio, television, and film department. Music from this episode came from Epidemic Sound and Renku Corporation, recorded in collaboration with nonprofit partners. To learn more about the Simply Dynamic podcast, visit simplydynamicpodcast.com. Until the next episode, take care, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.